We're live here on Flight 5 Live with Manish Mehta, the Daily News. As you know, you can follow Manish always at mmeta_NYDN on Twitter. Manish, wrote an article earlier in the week, as everybody's been talking about all week long, and titled "NY Jets Teammates Rip Backup Tim Tebow, Believe Terrible Quarterback Hasn't Improved." Manish, we know you've been all over all week. People have been on Twitter. People in Jets Nation are just in disarray now. Everybody's all over the place looking for the next person to blame. So when an article like this comes out, obviously it's a little controversial. So people are going to get on it right away. And as a professional, obviously you understand that and it's going to happen. But we're worried in Jets Nation about the team, about where we stand as a team, the locker room, and right now, obviously at 3-6, and the way the team has played on offense, everybody's worried. So, can you speak of, before we even get into the article and anything, about the chemistry and the not rapport isn't the right word, but the chemistry, I guess, is what you can say, in the locker room? Is there a disconnect between players on offense and defense, even between the quarterbacks? You can even break it down to that level. Is there something up inside that locker room?
No, I'm glad you asked me that first, Nick, because I've gotten this question over the past several days, trying to compare the locker room now versus last year. I think they're two totally different scenarios, because last year you're talking about prominent players like Santonio Holmes going after the offensive line and vice versa, and Sanchez versus Holmes. Everybody that I spoke to for this story is in agreement. They think that Mark Sanchez is the guy that should be the quarterback. There's no backbiting in terms of offense and defense that he touched on. The people I spoke to were both offensive and defensive players. And the sentiment, and I think this has gotten a little bit twisted and a little bit lost, isn't that the Jets are blaming Tim Tebow for their failings thus far. Mm-hmm. It's just that if they want to try to reverse course and start winning some games and perhaps make some kind of miracle run, it's going to be with Sanchez in their estimation and not Tebow. So I don't look at it as a locker room rift, and I know that that's an easy thing to point to, when a story like this comes out. But they are unified. They're unified behind number 6, for better or for worse.
Yeah, and in your article you wrote that more than a dozen, he spoke to more than a dozen Jet players and members of the organization, and and I guess over a course of time, can you kind of elaborate, I guess, a little on the article and when these quotes were taken by you? Obviously, as a journalist, over time, you collect your research, and then you come out with the article. Can you just give us a little background behind the article itself and the timeline, I guess, in between when these quotes were taken?
Sure. I mean, the quotes in the story are within the last couple of weeks, and I know Matt Slauson has come out, and let me just preface this by saying that I think Matt Slauson is a great guy. I've had many candid conversations with him since he's been a Jet. He's got a great backstory. He's overcome a lot, and I think it's a great story that he's a starter in the NFL. And we actually had a great conversation about this a few weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago, and I know that he came out and put a different timeline on it, and that's unfortunate, but I stand behind everything I said. In terms of everybody else, it's all within the past few weeks, the past 2 or 3 weeks. And when you get a story like this, you obviously don't talk to a dozen guys overnight. You don't talk to them in 48 hours. Mm-hmm. You keep it timely. You keep it relevant. I didn't speak to anyone about this in training camp or week 1 or week 2 or week 3. It's all within the last couple of weeks. And the Jets have only played 2 games in the last 3 weeks because of the bye, obviously. So the sentiment really has been the same. And these guys have seen, everybody in the organization has seen Tebow, Greg McElroy, and Mark Sanchez on the field together since April. So we're talking, 7-8 months, and you get a pretty good assessment of all of those guys, whether you're a player or somebody else in the building. And the sentiment again is that even though Mark Sanchez statistically hasn't been great, or you could say he's been poor, however you want to describe it, despite all of that, they still think, because they see both those guys, actually you could throw Greg McElroy in there as well, they see all 3 of these guys every day, and in their estimation, it's really not close. I didn't find one guy that I spoke to that said, you know what, why don't we try to throw Tebow in because he might be better than Sanchez, or he's just as good as Sanchez. the divide is so great in their minds that Sanchez is an NFL caliber starting quarterback who's struggling, granted, and Tim Tebow just isn't. It's not that Tim Tebow is a terrible person. I didn't find one guy that didn't commend Tebow for his work ethic, for putting in the time, for being a passionate guy. And I think fans can see that. I mean, obviously, you saw that on the field last year in Denver. And even though he doesn't really play much, you can see that when he speaks. That's just his demeanor. That's the way he carries himself. And that's something that, the players do notice. But ultimately, we're talking about his football skill. And these guys don't believe that he should be the starting quarterback. And that's really the point of the story.
Manish, if I could kind of change gears for a second, my question is kind of based more on like a journalistic kind of ethical standpoint, and I'm just interested in the guidelines and the steps that it takes to go through the daily news on letting an anonymous source go through and get published. I know a lot of different publications kind of and news outlets have different stances on it, and I'm just was interested on the daily news standpoint.
I think most credible newspapers, journalistic outlets, you talk to your editors. And then obviously that's the vetting process, and then ultimately, you'll determine with them if these are credible people, and obviously they lean on you because you know these people more than they do because you see them, and then ultimately, your editors sign off and it gets in the paper. I mean, that's been the way it's been my entire career for every newspaper that I've worked with, and look, again, I understand fans wanting to know, well, who said this? If there's no name on it, it's not credible. I get fans that want to know who it is. But journalistically speaking, sometimes anonymous sourcing is a fundamental and really the only way to get the true picture of an issue or the feeling of a player. And ultimately, in my opinion, has always been, at least covering football, it doesn't necessarily matter whether a linebacker or a running back or a wide receiver said these things. It's the content of what they said that matters the most. Because if you're a fan, you want to get a true picture of how the organization, how the team feels about a particular issue, or in this case, how they feel about the quarterback situation. And I think that it's a pretty accurate portrayal that the people in the Jets organization feel that Sanchez is the way to go. Because I know over the past couple weeks, there's certainly been a lot of discussion about, should Tim Tebow be the quarterback? Even when the Jets were, 3-4, whatever they were, several weeks back, because of Sanchez's poor play, there was discussions about should it be McElroy? Maybe give him a chance. Maybe give Tim Tebow a chance because of what Tim Tebow did in Denver. And it's interesting again that the people on the team have really never thought about that because, again, with all the struggles, it comes back to a lot of the people I spoke to. It comes back to what is around Mark Sanchez. And it's clearly, you don't want to absolve Mark Sanchez because he has made his fair share of mistakes. But when you look at the people around him, the personnel around him, people in the organization have taken notice. There's not much there.
Mm-hmm. And you kind of mentioned about the context and how things are being said, and more so than being the actual name behind it. If you could kind of just give us a little bit of insight of what you might think the purpose of these players kind of coming out and saying it, because obviously a lot of these guys were in the locker room from last year and they kind of saw the kind of in locker room mutiny that these anonymous sources kind of created within this locker room. So if you could kind of gauge from maybe in your own opinion. Why some of these players would come forward, albeit anonymously. Like, what are they gaining from kind of driving this story, so to speak?
Well, they just want to win games, and I think that they feel that the best way to win games is with Mark Sanchez. I mean, I know that's a simplified answer, and I know that maybe it's not sexy, but ultimately, each player on that team wants to win because if the team wins, it not only benefits the group, but ultimately it would benefit each player for whatever reason. Maybe they're in a contract year. Maybe they have incentives. I don't know, but I do know that the simplified answer and really the true answer is that everyone's in a better mood when they win. Yeah. And when given the choice of A, B, and C, which guy out of these three will give you the best chance to win? They chose A, which in this case is Mark Sanchez.
Right. Yeah. It also brings up an interesting point because do you think, this team over the last, 11, 12 games, We're 3-9. I mean, do they really think it? Sanchez has played so bad. He's 32nd in QBR. I mean, these guys who I'm watching the game from home, and I'm like, this guy's awful. I mean, just being honest, he's really bad. He can't hit outs. He can't throw a screen. A screen play can lead to an interception every other time you call it. I mean, why does this team think that Sanchez? I mean, all he really does well, in my opinion, is throw a decent deep middle, ball down the middle of the field. He does have a nice touch. He does well. But everywhere else, even in terms of leadership, I mean, a good leader doesn't let stuff like this come out on the backup. I mean, why is this team still holding on, you think, Manish, to 09 and 10, those championship games, or does this team really think that Sanchez is the guy for the future? Because I don't see it.
Well, first of all, Frank, I don't think it's fair to blame Mark Sanchez for this story coming out. You could be a leader, and you're not going to have control of what 52 other grown men are going to say, and people in the organization are going to say. I don't think it's fair to put on Mark Sanchez. I don't think it's fair to put on any team leader for any sport. Do I think that they believe he's the future? They've seen flashes in the past. You really don't have to go back, Frank, too far to see a guy go 16 for 20 in the second half in New England and say, wow, if this guy can do this against New England, I mean, you can bash New England's defense all day if you want, but nevertheless, it was an impressive second half, and you think, okay, this guy is pretty good. But then you see how that game ended. He fumbled, and I don't think it was his fault that he fumbled, but bottom line, he had a turnover to end that game. So the maddening thing about Mark Sanchez is that you'll see the guy who played really, really well against the Bills in the Week 1 opener, and you'll think, you know what, maybe this guy can string a couple games together. You'll go back, into your memory back and see a guy who played exceptionally well against the Patriots in the divisional playoff game a few years back, and you'll think, okay, well, this guy has it in him. He has done it. There's visual evidence. But then on the other side of the ledger, you see these really awful mistakes. You see him staring at Dustin Keller in the end zone for seemingly forever before he gets picked off. So I think the Jets are still trying to figure that out, whether he's going to be their future. They're hopeful because they've seen glimpses of it in the past. And I know that as a fan, it's frustrating when you see him make mistakes and you think to yourself, let's make a change, let's try something different. But it's not that easy in this league because it's not just about the production. It is partly about how much money do you have tied in, for better or for worse. And the average Jet fan is watching on front. He doesn't care. It's not his money. He doesn't understand the ramifications of the fact that Mark Sanchez, is $12.9 million against the cap next year. That's a huge number. That's not something you can just divorce yourself from if you're going to take a fair and honest look at the big picture. And if he stunk, meaning that he has never shown any signs of being a quality player, you could say, you know what, I don't care what the finances are. Forget it. But he has done enough on the field, and even frustrated Jet fans today can admit to that, to see that maybe there's a chance that this guy can become a better player if he does have good players around him, because he did play well in his second year when he had some legitimate weapons around him.
Yeah, listen, two things. First off, in terms of the financial situation, this is where I'm coming from. I don't care how much you owe a guy. I want to put the guy out there. I know you feel the same way, but I understand it's a business, but I want to put the guy out there that's going to get me wins. Opportunity cost. Who's going to make the organization happiest all around, and that's by winning. Second, I don't have a problem. Mark Sanchez against New England, if we're playing against New England, I'll start Sanchez over Tebow any day. It's against teams like, Seattle, Houston, San Fran, Baltimore. He doesn't play well. I mean, in an ideal situation with an ideal pocket and he has time and his receivers are running crisp routes and the play call that, whoever the offensive coordinator is calls in is correct against, X coverage, whatever it is, cover two. Yes, I want Sanchez throwing that ball because he is a pocket passer, or he came in as a pocket passer. But in terms of when a pocket breaks down, or if there's a little, the term chink in the armor, it's not going to happen. I mean, I've seen it over and over again, and it's gotten to the point where there's a ton of great backup quarterbacks that can do this, that can have an ideal pocket and can make throws. I mean, you're a professional quarterback. You should be able to make throws when you're protected and your receivers run great routes. I mean, I can make a couple good throws here and there. You know what I mean?
Backup on this team, though?
The backup on this team is Tebow, and it's clear it's Tebow. Now, I don't think Rex, and we're going to
that backup that you're talking about who can come in and do better than Sanchez on this team right now. And I think that's
absolutely, in my opinion, it is. In my opinion, it is. But and this is what I want to get to next. Manish, January, an article came out, with players that question Sanchez's ability to be that tough leader and to work hard, and they questioned his ability,
his work ethic,
saying he was lazy and is pampered and whatnot. Now this story comes out about Tebow. My question to you is, I feel like you want McElroy in. I mean, if I'm not wrong, I think that's the next guy.
Frank, did you say I wanted Tebow in a couple weeks ago?
Oh, you do? Listen, you did want Tebow in. I know deep down, I know you like Sanchez, but I know deep down in there, you still know that Tebow can win football games. I mean, am I wrong?
Well, I think that Tebow can win football games, and I've always said that, look, neither Tim Tebow nor Mark Sanchez will ever reach their true potential if they're on the same team. Right. They have stunted each other's growth, not by any fault of their own, but they've been put together. And I think that that's a bad mix. Tim Tebow on the right team that's willing to do what John Fox did last year, and that is to totally revamp your offense and buck the trend of being a passing league and tailoring everything around his skill set. If you're willing to do that, then I do think that Tim Tebow can find success, at least, for a short amount of time. I don't know how many years you could do that, because ultimately he's going to expose himself to too many shots, and nobody escapes injury in this league. So I don't know if it's a long-term answer, but I do think that he can find success in this league. And the same thing with Mark Sanchez. You cannot ignore 2009 and 2010. I know Jets fans don't want to hear about it because they didn't make the playoffs last year. It doesn't look like they're going to make the playoffs this year. But the guy has shown, Mark Sanchez that is, has shown promise in this league. And it's very difficult. There's only 32 starting quarterbacks, 32 people in the United States of America that have this job. It's very difficult to find a replacement. I know you said there's a lot of backups across the league that could do better than him, but you're not going to bring in a new backup every year or two as a patchwork type of solution. You want to build your franchise around a young, growing quarterback, and that's what the Jets think they have. And I'll be perfectly honest with you. I do think that Tim Tebow's arrival has affected Sanchez. And you could say, hey, you know what? If a quarterback is going to be affected by that, he's not the franchise quarterback anyway. You want a guy who's tougher than that. Well, I don't believe that, because Tim Tebow is an entity all by himself. His popularity transcends football. It's really an amazing thing. And to have him, again, no fault of his own, but to have him as your backup, well, let's be honest, everybody knows that Mark Sanchez, for all his flaws, is a better player at the quarterback position than Tebow. So you have an inferior player who's much more popular than you behind you. That puts anybody in a very precarious position. And I don't think you can discount that. And I don't think you can dismiss saying that Mark Sanchez is not tough enough because he can't handle that.
Do you think the locker room, if you had to say, do defenders feel that way? Do offensive players feel that way? Is it the entire locker room? I mean, who do you think feels that Tebow is an inferior quarterback? I mean, I haven't
found anybody, Frank, I'll be perfectly honest with you, I haven't found anybody in the organization, the locker room, in the locker room, out of the locker room, not one person who thinks that Tim Tebow is a better quarterback. Not one. And I've obviously been here since Tim Tebow came aboard. From the moment that he came here and had that press conference until until tonight, I haven't found one person, not one, and I'm being perfectly honest with you, not one person thinks that Tim Tebow is a better NFL caliber quarterback than Mark Sanchez, and that's taking into consideration everything that Tebow did last year. They don't believe it. They don't believe that what they saw last year was anything more than a fluke.
Do you think that has something to do with the Jets from like a PR stance though? Because it seems odd to me, and then we kind of joke around, us four together when we hear players on the radio and TV, it's almost as if the Jets, from a PR stance, say to these guys, when you're talking about Mark Sanchez, and I know this is probably just a big conspiracy
Stephen Hill's
theory.
the best example.
Stephen
Hill sounds like a robot.
And they always come out and they say, Mark works hard. He's here from sun up to sundown, or whatever they use. I feel as if it's almost like the Jets, from a PR, whether it's whoever it is in charge. I know Jared is in charge of PR and he does a great job, but I feel like it's almost like that's what they're telling them to say.
Not even this whole thing is scripted, told, but it's a culture. Back up Mark. Back him up. 2 AFC championships.
Do you feel any of it? Do you feel that way at all? And do you think that could be possible, or you think it's totally outlandish?
Well, you're not going to get in any professional sport, really in any sport at all. You're not going to get a player to rip a teammate on the record. For lack of a better phrase, it's just not going to happen unless there's some kind of personal bad blood between those people. It's not going to happen. And I do think, for the most part, especially on the offensive side, because these guys spend a lot of time together, that, again, it sounds like a broken record, but they've seen, a lot of these guys have been with Sanchez through these 2 playoff runs, or at least one of the playoff runs, and they've seen what he's capable of. Nobody in the locker room is saying that Mark Sanchez is a Pro Bowl quarterback. I haven't heard anybody say that to me, publicly or privately. But they do think that he's got some redeeming qualities. And look, there's only one Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees and Peyton Manning. To me, that's the Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks in the NFL today. Most teams don't have guys like that. And to be perfectly honest with you, I don't think Eli Manning could do much with this offense. Eli Manning is a great quarterback in my estimation, but he couldn't really lift the players that Mark Sanchez has. He couldn't even lift them to that much of a greater height, in my opinion.
Yeah, Manish, real quick. When I saw you at training camp, I was there only one day, so I wasn't there a lot. Tebow outplayed Sanchez that training camp. I mean, you remember that I tweeted you because you had stats on training camp, and I tweeted you, was that Cumberland, what was it, a 45-yarder touchdown? Was that counted because it was a holding? You said it wasn't. But when I was there, Tebow outplayed Sanchez that training camp. I mean, he was throwing darts. I remember that dart to was it Gates or whoever it was, or I don't remember. It was down the right
Gates
hash.
Yeah, but you're talking about
it wasn't
training
Gates.
camp practice in, 3-4 months ago?
I'm just saying, that day I left the training camp and I'm like, Tebow outplayed, and Bill was there with me, and I saw Manish there and we said hi. I said I don't. Bill, you were there with me, and Tebow outplayed Sanchez that training camp, and fans were agreeing with me, and I was there one day. I mean, it doesn't count, but something else is up, and maybe not, but I don't know, man. Something's going on, and I don't think this guy Sanchez, I don't think is delivering to his ability. I just don't think he is, but whatever. Bill, you can.
Well, I mean, it's tough to do, through the one training camp. But like you said, something else might be going on. And there was an article on NY Jets Cap. Manish, they do a great job. He does a great job. I think it's one guy, and he was talking, and he brought up a great point. He brought up a bunch of numbers, how the Tebow contract with the escalators, and if they play a certain percentage of the snaps, it kicks in, and his contract jumps up. I think it is like $4 or $5 million. It's a ridiculous number. And when they brought him in, Rex and Sperano's whole thing, he can get 4 snaps, he can get 20 snaps, he can play 25% of the time. Do you think also that those escalators is playing a huge role in this? Because you never see him get more than like 2 snaps combined back to back. He hasn't gotten a full drive here. He obviously hasn't gotten a full quarter, and he hasn't been the starter, obviously. It's been two snaps, I think, was the most consecutive plays. Do you think that these clause and these escalators in the contract plays a big role as why Tebow's not really getting those drives yet? Or do you think Rex is really, deep down in his mind, thinks that Sanchez is the guy?
Well, I don't think the escalators played a part in terms of how they're using him. I think what they think of him plays a part in how they're using him. If Tim Tebow was really that great of a passing quarterback or passing option, because if you guys remember, Tony Sperano distinguished what he had in Miami with Ronnie Brown in the Wildcat with what he has with Tim Tebow in the Wildcat now, by saying that there's really an element of pass now versus really just a run element with Miami. But then you've only, up until last week, you only seen Tebow throw the ball maybe a handful of times, 3 times or so. So I think that tells you a lot about what they think of him as a passer. And I don't remember the other part of your question. Maybe you asked me about the finances.
Yeah, no, I mentioned how the escalators in the contract jumps up to
No, yeah, and
725.
it's interesting because I think it was something like 55% of the snaps in 2 of the first 3 years. He gets an extra $11 million, which is
Right.
split 5.5 in 2013 and the remaining in 2014. But he still has an opportunity to get that money if he doesn't play 55% of the snaps in 2 of his first 3 years. If he plays 70% of the snaps next year, and obviously in order to do that, he'd have to be the starting quarterback, and then he would get the full $11 million in the final year of his in the final year of his contract in 2014. Now that's all fine and good, but I'd be very surprised if Tim Tebow is on the Jets next year.
Well, that's kind of my question to bring up. I mean, after given everything that's transpired this season with the record, the injuries, all the negative publicity kind of surrounding this team, the circus show label, what's next for this team here? You know, are heads going to roll? Are we going to see people on the chopping block, such as Tannenbaum, Rex Ryan? What happens to Sanchez and Tebow? Do you see one of them going anywhere? Do both of them staying? Someone getting traded off? I mean, what do you see transpiring from the rest of the season?
Well, Rex, I said before that Rex Ryan's going to come back.
Right.
I firmly believe that. He has built up way too much collateral in my mind with Woody Johnson. He's made this team relevant, and I know they have struggled over the past year, but Woody Johnson likes the attention that Rex Ryan has brought, coupled with the success he had in his first 2 years. He'd obviously prefer to see that success again, but he does have 2 years remaining on his contract through 2014, as does Mike Tannenbaum. Tannenbaum is the more interesting question, because if Woody Johnson is going to make a change at general manager, typically general managers like to bring in their own coaches, and again, that kind of gives it an interesting dynamic, because I'm pretty sure that Woody Johnson would want Rex Ryan back, and he is very comfortable with Mike Tannenbaum, and I'm not sure he's ready to scrap the whole front office. I think there'll be some changes perhaps in the front office, but it wouldn't surprise me if Tannenbaum is back. Mark Sanchez is going absolutely nowhere. They guaranteed his salary next year, and again, they still believe that it's too early to pull the plug on him. And as I said before, guys, I would be very surprised if Tim Tebow is on the Jets next year. It's really, for lack of a better word, a better phrase, it's been too much of a headache without really having enough results to justify that headache. So I don't think that Tebow will be a Jet next year.
But is there a market for Tim Tebow at this point? I mean, we looked at coming out of last year, a guy who won the division, went 7-4 as a starter, won a playoff game. There's only a market of 3 teams maybe that possibly went for him. You look at him to the playing time and just what he's put out this year. Hasn't that hurt his stock, and just having one less year of developing as a quarterback? Is there what is the range of teams that are interested in him? Can you read that at all?
Well, I mean, the obvious answer, and you guys already know it, is Jacksonville.
Right.
So it would not surprise me. I don't know exactly how they will feel about Blaine Gabbert at the end of the season, but I know that Shad Khan, the owner, really wants him there, and the only reason that he's not on the Jaguars now is because the coaching staff made it clear to the Tebow camp that they did not want Tim Tebow. There was not going to be a quarterback competition. He was not going to have any opportunity down there. Otherwise, he would have signed off on a deal with Jacksonville. Instead, he looked at Mark Sanchez. He looked at the inconsistency that Sanchez had last year and thought to himself, you know what, if this guy repeats what happened in 2011, maybe I'll have a shot. So that's the only reason that he's here now. In terms of the market, they gave up a 4th and a 7th, I believe, a 4th and a 6th. If they can get a 4th rounder, that'd be a miracle in my estimation. I think you could probably get a 5th rounder for him, but there's obviously not that much of a market. But again, with all the ancillary things that come along with Tim Tebow that the Jets have seen firsthand over this year, I can't imagine that they'd bring him back.
Yeah.
Manish, why do you think the Jets haven't not only given Tebow a drive, but why haven't they allowed him to play in games like in the Houston game? Not the Houston game, San Francisco game, and even Seattle, Miami, 30-9 blowout. I mean, why haven't they allowed him to play? Because we allow Sanchez to play, thinking he might get garbage passing yards, but he can't do that. He's one of the only quarterbacks in the league that, seriously, he never gets garbage yards. I mean, a lot of quarterbacks, when you're down, usually, 28-7, you get those garbage yards in the fourth quarter, but he can't do that. So I don't understand why they don't give Tebow a shot. I mean, I you know what I think, and maybe I'm wrong. I think if they give Tebow a shot, he'll ignite the offense and actually pick up first downs and make big plays, and that'll scare off everyone about Sanchez, and Sanchez is getting the big bucks, and Tannenbaum doesn't like to play guys that he's not paying a lot of money. He wants to play the guys that he's paying. So I don't know what you think about that.
Well, I think that you might be a disgruntled Mark Sanchez fantasy football owner, because it sounds like the lack of garbage yards is a source of contention for you. But no, seriously, I think it's a valid point. You definitely raise a valid point there, because if it is, quote unquote garbage time, and Tebow does move the team, maybe leads him to a touchdown or two, a meaningless touchdown or two, that would only stoke the flames a bit more. And then you could legitimately have a full-blown quote-unquote quarterback controversy. I don't think the Jets wanted any part of that. So I definitely think that rationale is probably why you didn't see him come in mop-up duty those few times that you mentioned.
I almost feel like it's hurting this team not giving him a shot. And I think even if he came in and actually showed some promise, I almost think the fan base would feel more comfortable. I mean, I have a lot of Tebow fans. Not a lot. I have a couple Tebow fans on Twitter. You have a lot of fans. I have like 400 and some followers. I don't have that.
It's not a numbers game, Frank.
Yeah, no,
I'm not sure, Frank, that I would call my followers necessarily fans of mine.
Yeah, not after this week. You probably got it bad this week, huh?
Frank's got Tebow.
Yeah, no comment.
Yeah, no, I have a lot of Tebow fans tweeting me, and they want to know, I mean, what's going on? Why is he here? I mean, it just doesn't, you figure if a guy's playing as bad as Mark, 32nd in QBR, I mean, it's got to get to the point where you try something. I mean,
yeah.
Well, they wanted to light a fire under Sanchez, and they thought by bringing in a young quarterback who would just, led his team to a playoff victory, that they would do that. But I really think the big miscalculation from an organizational standpoint was that they didn't factor in, really, it seems kind of funny to say, but they didn't factor in the Tebow mania aspect of it. They knew he was popular. They knew that he had such a great following, but I don't really think it necessarily hit home until they saw it firsthand, and by then I think they realized it was too late.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big wonder why Tebow hasn't gotten the snaps, but I guess time can only tell what happens from here on out and how long it will last and how long it could last. But Manish, before we do let you go, I wanted to just. Everybody wants to know about the unnamed sources. Obviously, you know it too. We all know it. Frankly, I don't care, to be honest, who said it. It pisses me off more the fact that it had to be said, and Rex Ryan and whoever the leader of this team they say has let it go this far. That's what bothers me more than the fact that whoever said it is unnamed. But regarding the unnamed sources and everything, it's a kind of a two-part question. One, do these players know that they're going to be used in an article that you wrote, and do they maintain a strong point on, Manish, we have a good relationship, I know you're not going to put my name out there. Do they make sure that they're unnamed in this paper, or is that kind of the route that you go because of your relationship?
I mean, it depends. It depends on who you're talking to, when you're talking to these people, about what. I mean, obviously they know I'm a reporter, and they're fully aware of what's going to be of what the topic is and what they're saying and what will be quoted, and again, that's just kind of a case by case basis. And each reporter handles their sources differently, so I'll just leave it at that.
Hey Manish, I'll quiet some of the Tebow followers if you tell me who the unnamed source was.
Hang in there, Frank. I think next year, maybe in Jacksonville, you get the season tickets. Check out your guy next year.
I'm telling you, if we let this guy go, it'll be an epic Jets quarterback fail.
Oh, boy.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
All right. Well,
what? I'm telling you, it's going to happen.
Manish, we're going to let you go. You hung around with us for a long time. I hope we didn't piss you off too much, but I think it was all around pretty good job by everybody. But of course, thanks for coming on again, and hopefully in a couple of weeks we can talk more about the team than the team actually making some improvements than the whole locker room issues.
Yeah, I thought you guys were going to ask me about Matt Mulligan and Kellen Clemens. I'm a little disappointed that you didn't.
When they left, we kind of hoped they were gone for good, so we kind of want to bring them up again.
All right, guys. Thanks for the time.
All right,
I'll talk to you later.
Take care, bud.
Manish.
All right, thank you.